You are now listening to Asking for a Friend with TalkDoc, sharing insights through real, honest, and practical ways to improve your communication and relationships. Featuring your hosts, Dr. Pamela Kreiser, Meredith Edwards Nagel, and Teighlor Polendo.
How was your day today, Meredith?
I had a few perceived threats. I may have gotten a little defensive.
Oh, really?
What's that like?
Oh, I don't know. It's funny. I went back and looked at our previous research about this, and I've learned nothing. I have not improved. Wow, Meredith, you still suck at the same thing. And the strategy I talked about, I want to ask more questions. That's a good thing to lean into. We'll get into the strategies later, but no, I don't want to do that. I'm terrible at this, but I will shift some blame on the subject. I know we're going to get into Gottman.
You're going to shift some blame. Perfect.
I'm going to shift some blame, which I know a lot of people in my generation like to do. It's my parents' fault. So it's not even my fault.
Nothing's your fault. Okay.
Oh, gosh. Anyway.
All right. So we're resurrecting the topic of defensiveness due to its incredible popularity, not in a good way.
So we're getting into defensiveness. I like that you said we're bringing it back. I started researching about how being defensive with your partner in front of your children can negatively impact them. And I went down a rabbit hole of how I'm already ruining my children based on how I am at this. So it was really comforting this week. I think I'm really excited to have a reason to put my kids in therapy one day.
So how are you ruining your kids?
We're talking about defensiveness. I loved Dr. John Gottman's definition of it. Do you have the definition? Do you want to read it? Because I did a for dummies version of his definition.
I liked the dumb down.
Yeah, so I'll do the
like the
Gottman and then
definition?
you do the for dummies.
Yeah, go ahead.
Gottman says defensiveness involves self-protection through righteous indignation or portraying oneself as an innocent victim to deflect perceived attacks.
For everyone else that wants to know what that means, I took that and I tried to break it apart a little bit and understand that defensiveness is when somebody protects themselves by reacting angrily or acting like a victim themselves to avoid that feeling of being attacked. Which I realized, I'm worse at this. My husband will say something like, oh, let's work on this. Or I noticed, is the dishwasher still not emptied? Not even saying that I should be doing it. And I go to be quick to be an angry sharp.
Okay, but sorry, I have a bone to pick. If he knows he didn't do it, then it's only a criticism of you, no?
Like he'll notice that the house is a mess sometimes. Oh, the kitchen's a mess. And he'll say, we need to clean it.
When he says we need to clean it, does he mean the two of you or the one of you?
Honestly, I think he means both of us need to.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I every time take it like he means you need to clean this kitchen, bitch. And so I get real, I didn't have time. I was doing this and this. And he's, whoa, I honestly meant me too. It's the end of the workday and I can do this too. And making an observation of something I want to have done in the house. That's all. And I know that he's not directing it at me in a way that I need to hurry up, but I completely take it that way.
So let's break that message down. We call your interpretation of it a veiled you message.
I'm feeling me
it's like
all
when
the time.
I say to my husband, when are we going to be taking out the trash? I know I'm not doing that. It's a veiled you message, meaning it sounds better, but I really mean him.
Yes. And I know that can happen, but no, this is definitely an example where I am just quick to be on the defense. I feel like I'm being criticized.
Taking it that way.
Yeah, I feel like I'm being criticized. That's my job and I should have hurried up and done it. Even though I haven't had experience with him treating me like that ever.
I was wondering about the distinction between being criticized and being at fault versus being criticized and feel like there's no justification or the validation's not there.
So whether it's true about you or not?
Yeah. And
so I could say, Teighlor, you're being mean right now.
Yeah.
And you know whether you're being mean.
Yeah.
You're always a little mean, but.
Love that about her.
But is it that? So you perceive it? Okay.
Is 2025 the year we're going to start criticizing and making fun of Teighlor? Because I like this change. This is great.
Girl, we know Meredith wins the quizzes. Teighlor loses the fight. Teighlor is the crazier of the two. Teighlor
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All the
Yeah.
things. You keep saying that, and listen to our podcast because Teighlor is losing every episode. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh,
Anyway,
so
All right.
clearly we're fine with it, how things are.
no, this is what's frustrating. And I know I'm being lighthearted and joking because I'm laughing through the fact that being defensive
through
is
pain.
one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse of John
Yeah.
Gottman. And that is a prediction of our relationships failing, in essence.
End.
To see that I have a tendency to lean in that direction and need strategies to come out of it that stick with me. Because obviously, I may have done this learning with you two, and I still am failing. I'm happy we're doing this again.
Okay, let's talk about the 4 horsemen. John Gottman identifies through his really great research program that there are 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that he says signal or show that the end of the relationship is likely.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean for sure it's happening. I like to talk about them as check engine lights. I'm a little less fatalistic than John Gottman. His research can come across that way from time to time.
You're down.
I think it's a little bit more the engine light is, okay, that's coming on. And if it's coming on a lot, you can have a bigger problem with your car if your check engine light comes on a lot. So I think that's how I would talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree that when we see these things in ourselves, we don't love seeing the light go on.
So what is the impact of defensiveness if we don't wrestle with this? We don't
Well, I
grow
was
from
thinking
it.
about your comment about parenting. That's a pretty interesting idea to explore. What if we're defensive in front of the children? What does that do?
What I learned is that if it's frequent, meaning it happens often between you and your partner, or the parents, or in front of the kids, it's unresolved conflicts, and it can make kids have a lack of security. It can lead to things like anxiety. It can make kids struggle to develop effective communication and problem-solving skills. I'm supposed to be teaching and regulating positive problem-solving skills to my children, and I'm seeing that this is something I definitely struggle with. If you're a parent or you're somebody around children you want to be a positive influence on, this is something that's for them. It's a growth for them. So for me to learn how I'm defensive towards my husband is a growth opportunity for them to have better problem solving skills in their lives. And that was a moment for me in learning this week of, whoa, this isn't just about, even though I love my husband and myself and want a good life for us, it can trickle down to them.
Yeah, because they're watching your every move.
Yeah. And I want them to be adaptable, problem solving, good communicating people that have healthy relationships. So this is something I know I need to work on.
You both have small children. Do you think children are normally defensive? Do you think they start out defensive?
No.
I don't think so.
It seems not to me, but it's been a while since I've had little kids.
No,
but I
'cause
feel like little kids are more curious and more open, so they aren't defending as much because they don't think they know everything.
Yeah, I feel like they seem more open when you go to tell them something. It's generally a teaching moment and they're interested in learning most things. So I feel like they don't have this piece that is what I feel when I get defensive of, oh, you're saying something's wrong with me or attacking a part of my identity. I'm a bad person or something, which is when I tend to go defensive. So I feel like they don't have that identity piece to it. And they're just, oh, cool, I'm learning something new. And they just seem more open to it. That would be my perspective.
Yeah. So if we sit down with one of the little kids and say, let me show you how to load the dishwasher, that's going to be different than your husband sitting you down saying, let me show you how to load the dishwasher.
Oh my God.
That's so good.
You
Can
might
you
get a little
imagine?
defensive about that.
Ooh, can you imagine
I know we're joking about that. What about the person that reloads the dishwasher? That fixes the person loading the dishwasher? Is that you guys? Are you guys fixers of the loading?
No, like Teighlor is.
No, I'm married to a fixer. I'll load the dishwasher throughout the day. This is so stupid. I can't believe we're talking about this. And then I'm ready to run it, right? But then at the end of the day, he's trying to fit a lot more in. The space needed has changed from when I was loading it throughout the day. There weren't that many dishes. And now he's, I got to cram a bunch in. So he'll undo everything I did to now fit more in. But in my head, he has this right way of doing something, and I'm doing it as they came, just working with what I had. He'll repack the car too. He'll repack my bag.
Wow.
Does he enjoy is Tetris his number one game?
Yeah. He honestly, he thinks it is a game. He's impressed with himself.
Okay. So there's two levels of the defensiveness that could come from that. One is if you're told, let me show you how to run the dishwasher. That might be a different reaction than you coming back in and seeing them redo a thing you already did. So you could get defensive in either case.
Yeah. And the level we're at is I'm too tired to care. That's where we're at today.
So your defensiveness has gone down, not because you're better, but because you're more exhausted.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking about this topic all day. And honestly, if someone came at me with something, I think I would just listen and say, okay, because I don't have any fight in me.
You know what's so interesting about that? My dad doesn't even listen to this podcast. When I talk to my dad, sometimes I get this inkling of being defensive. And I was wondering where this is coming from with kids. And the research I read said that sometimes you can be more prone to being defensive if you have felt more heavily criticized as a kid, which I feel my dad leans more on the type of being critical of things. And when I was visiting him recently, he was critiquing something very nominal. And I had the same feeling Teighlor had, where I was just, wow, I'm just way too fucking tired to get into this. I know that the strategy isn't to overwhelm yourself to the point of exhaustion so you feel too tired to defend yourself. That's not a strategy we're recommending.
No.
But that's why I'm wanting to know, okay, so this is defensiveness in a home where you have children. Definitely doesn't create good problem-solving skills for kids. Then those kids grow up. And if they're in the home of a lot of defensiveness from one parent or both, then they perceive themselves to be more heavily critiqued or criticized, which tends to have that person feel the need to be in a more defensive stance, which was a moment for me of, oh, okay, so I have felt criticized in certain ways in my life, and now I'm an adult in a relationship that is healthy, and this person is not meaning to criticize me, but I tend to lean in that way and then am sharper in those moments, and it's not doing anything good for us. It's definitely something I do that does nothing to offer any positive direction for a disagreement or just a moment in conversation with my husband. So
I liked what you said about you're being defensive in place of productive conflict management.
Oh, yeah.
So it does that stopping function, which I think is interesting to talk about, which might be why it's one of the four horsemen for Gottman, which is it just takes us off track. So all of a sudden, the thing we were talking about, which was the dishwasher, now becomes, why are you attacking me? I liked what you said, Teighlor, about identity. If I think your statement is about me, you think I'm lazy, actually, or you think I'm incompetent, it's an identity piece for me, then I'm probably going to get more defensive.
Yeah. I was wondering, I'm going to reframe Meredith and my exhaustion as to why we're not fighting. Is it that we don't see value in fighting or becoming defensive for that type of relationship? Being defensive or even combative or trying to argue your point back would fall on deaf ears. So I'm going to say it's a sign of maturity, and you just are learning when to keep your mouth shut.
I think there definitely is that, which I am grateful for. It's more, though, why am I so defensive with the person I need to be least defensive with, which is my husband?
Yes. Right. When it comes to your partner. But I would say also, if you are not defensive about something that matters to you and you just play quiet and you're like, whatever, they think I'm an idiot, that goes to contempt. And then you start to have contempt towards that person. And I could see myself doing that. I'm not even going to fight you on that, bro. I'm just shutting down. So that.
Well, be careful, though, about how you talk about it, because contempt is going to be different when it's felt versus displayed.
Okay.
So when Gottman's talking about contempt as a four horseman, Gottman's saying these are insults that we say. These are faces that we make. This is mockery that we engage in.
So I feel like a situation could happen. I would want to be defensive and say my side. But if I'm so over it, then I'll just choose contempt in that moment.
So if your relationship's going to terminate, you won't let it happen on defensiveness. You'll go straight for the kill and go for contempt, which is the worst of the four horsemen, according to Gottman.
When you're feeling defensive, you need to voice that in a healthy way. Otherwise, you're just going to pile it on and then contempt's going to come or stonewalling's going to come. Then I'm going to backlash, throw something back at you. And now we're hitting almost all the horsemen and the end is coming.
It's like a corral of horses.
Yeah.
So definitely what I hear you saying with Teighlor with defensiveness is it's not pretty, but it's human to want to defend yourself. That's not just by itself a completely negative thing, but it's when you move into defensiveness that shifts blame or makes excuses or comes out in a way that's non-productive or stops communication, then it doesn't do a service to yourself or your relationships. And so what are the strategies to overcome that?
Yeah, try to respond in a healthy way. Don't just let it go and say, I just won't be defensive and keep your mouth shut, because I feel like you're going to go to other horsemen then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're basically saying the challenge is deal with it in that lane of defensiveness.
Yeah.
Don't switch it to contempt and start saying insults or making negative faces. And don't stonewall in that you check out of the conversation.
Yes.
Stay in defensiveness and just be better.
And just acknowledge, okay, I'm feeling defensive. Why am I feeling defensive? Are they attacking my identity? Is this something true I need to improve? I messed up. I didn't do something right. And that's okay that they can call me out on something. Whatever it is, whether you're right or wrong. But I feel like complacency in a relationship goes to those other horsemen. And that's how we reach the end of a relationship.
I think we're more defensive when there's a kernel of truth to the statement that was made.
Yeah.
So our reaction, I think, grows to become bigger when there's some part that's true. I know someone who can be late from time to time, who, when called out on being late, will get more defensive about that. And it's not either of you.
It's not?
It's this other person I know.
What? I know I can be late sometimes. I'm not defensive about that.
No, but let's say you tend to sometimes be late. Then when you're called out on it, it's true. You might get a little more defensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you do? I'll go to my partner and I'll say, hey, why wasn't this done? And instead of just saying I didn't have time or answer it, they just start listing all these other things. But that didn't answer the actual question.
No, it did, though, for them. I didn't unload the dishwasher because I was chopping wood in the backyard and I was filing papers and I was attending to the children and I was fill in the blank. People do that all the time. They don't do something, so they explain all the other things they did. It still doesn't answer the original question.
Yeah.
And often that thing needed to be done, so people get defensive about that.
Okay, so primarily we're talking about our romantic relationships.
Close relationships, for sure.
It could be at work, though, right? If you present something.
Sure.
Yeah, a supervisor has a critique of you and
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So defensiveness can show up in lots of different types of interactions, for sure.
One of the things that Gottman talks about is what are we protecting ourselves from? And they say we protect ourselves from personal responsibility, from blame, from hurt, and even new information. I get the protect ourselves against my responsibility. Oh, was I supposed to be taking in the trash? Or was I supposed to be doing this chore? Or was I supposed to be here on time? I could see some of those things. I love the protecting yourself from new information, because we've all seen it where you say something and the person didn't know that information and they get defensive because they find themselves being maybe incompetent or uninformed in that moment. And we've talked about curiosity being an important word this year in this season of the podcast. This is the opposite of curiosity. I'm going to protect myself against new information because it bothers me you know more about this than I do.
The opposite of curiosity, I think, is defensiveness.
Protecting yourself from new information is the opposite of curiosity. And there's people in our world who really want to be the expert all the time. So they don't like new information because it means they're not the expert.
So then maybe when I think I'm so horrible at this, I give myself like just a tiny bit of grace or something. Because what I felt when you were saying that was, wow, like I'm learning something new about this. And I want to have growth in this area of my life, even though my way sometimes can lean to want to defend myself from not being true, like about me. The curiosity in me on this is that, okay, so there's new learning about strategies to approach this different or to understand why this is happening. Then the tools can continue to grow and evolve.
I would make one more comment about the parenting where you said I'm defensive and I'm ruining the children and they're going to need, counseling and all these things. The good news is there's other things you're doing well.
Hopefully, gosh.
So
Yeah,
no,
girl.
but you raise
Yeah.
these small kids and you think, oh, shouldn't have really shown you that argument or shouldn't have really said that in front of you or shouldn't have had that reaction. Right. But there's also a whole bunch of really good things happening. So we don't want to pretend that it's all just a bad reel that they play.
Of course. No, being human is hard, and I don't want to show perfection either. And I think that's an element of being curious and being open to the new information.
The great news about not wanting to be perfect is you can't anyway.
Touche. Thank
Check.
you.
So there
Yeah.
is that. You can try.
Yeah.
We've all
Also-
seen it where people try.
On the other end of this, I feel like if you start being curious as the person maybe making an accusation, that might just go smoother for you. Hey, was there a reason why you loaded the dishwasher this way, or what's going on? We talked about this needed to be done on this date. Why didn't it happen?
What's wrong with you?
Before you, I know what you're trying to do, Teighlor, but I think what you're doing is just getting into the strategy of how to snap yourself out of the defensive mode of the place.
Right.
So what I hear you saying is you're asking for more information. What happened here?
But sometimes it's hard to craft the question that doesn't sound either condescending or critical. Is there a way to say something that might be less defensive producing? So I know with one of our children, if I say checking in on this child is always good on that language. That's just a way checking in on
Like that?
fill in the blank. It doesn't mean anything. It's not
Mhm.
like you should have done this thing or you shouldn't have done this thing. Just seeing what's our status.
Yeah.
I think I've used that with my husband. I've used what's the status on this.
Instead of for the 10th time, did you do that thing?
When we think about asking those neutral questions, one of the challenges will be figuring out a way to phrase it so that it doesn't produce more negativity and it does get us more information. There's a couple of phrases that we could use. One that I use a lot is help me understand what's going on with this, or bring me up to speed on what we're doing about that, which sort of suggests the other person knows more about it.
Mhm.
Because you're bringing me up to speed. So that means that I don't have the lowdown or the information on that thing. And help me understand or bring me up to speed or fill me in on what's going on with the dishwasher that you just reloaded, you creep.
So petty. I love it.
That's one strategy. You were talking about a second one, Meredith?
Yeah, the second one would be to ask for a reframe to help while the interaction is happening, so to manage the interaction. And Gottman suggests another way is to ask them to reword something, reframe it. But before you do that, state that you're having a defensive feeling or sensation happening with yourself, so that person knows, hey, I'm feeling like I'm getting defensive with how you're saying that. Can you try to reword that again or tell me in a different way? Or, I'm going to need a redo on that.
Yeah.
Or even I think we've joked about before about some things. Let's leave the room and come back and try one more time.
Oh, yeah.
We laugh at it and there's like a silliness to it. Sometimes the humor helps me, but also it actually does help. That's the point. So if it works for you, it works.
I think one of the things I like about that recommendation is saying, I'm feeling defensive. So can you help me understand what's going on here? That idea of starting with I'm feeling defensive is a useful tool in that it levels the playing field a little better, because I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. I'm feeling on the defense though. Help me here. I remember recently I had a friend who was getting a little upset. We were having an interaction over something, and I heard myself say to her, I'm struggling to find the best way to respond to you. And it totally worked. And she completely got out of her zone because I started with I'm struggling. It's not like I'm good. And I wasn't sure what to say to her because she had a couple different thoughts she was having and she was a little mad at a couple people. And I thought, I'm going to get in trouble too. So I said, I'm struggling with what would be a good response for you right now on this. I don't know how to help you. And I think both of those examples are ways that we can not put ourselves first, because the thing we're battling on defensiveness is this protection of self. That's why I prioritize myself above you. I'm going to protect. And even if I look like a jerk or I sound like a jerk, I'm going to be defensive because I got to protect me. And when we say I'm struggling or I'm starting to feel defensive, then that's a way that we can access that. I know on the Gottman Institute, they have another recommendation, which is they'll say you could start by saying the story I'm making up about myself is that you think I'm lazy.
Yeah.
Or the story I'm making up is that I'm a bad mom.
I definitely think what you're saying is probably more largely true. I wrestle and want to fight a little bit that it's just about that I defend, because it's like a pompous kind of attitude. Sometimes I think the defense couldn't have been that way, because then that would be something that would be damaging to us. I can't be that bad or something. I don't know.
You're prioritizing yourself. Me above we.
Above the we. I think that's where I do know, whether it's because you think it's, oh, I didn't want to hurt something. You think it's coming from this pure place, which sometimes I'm telling myself that. The point is that the defensive attitude puts yourself before the success of the team, which Teighlor, you said before about, what is it? Married people.
If you're fighting to win, then everyone's losing.
Yeah. Which I think at the heart of defensiveness, you're fighting for you to win above the relationship.
Yeah.
I like the suggestion that we ask for more information. We try to do that in a neutral way. I like the idea that we can say the story I'm telling myself is that I'm not good enough, or that I've failed you, or that I'm a bad mom, or that I'm a bad spouse or a bad friend. And I think anytime we bend the knee, we're going against that defensiveness. Defensiveness inherently is not bending the knee.
Is that what the third strategy is? Essentially, you're reading it as bending the knee.
I think that's where we're going, which Teighlor already brought up the solution, which is take responsibility. And that does let the air completely out of defensiveness.
Yeah, I think back, the example I was thinking of, I said, hey, this needs to happen by this date. And then I check in, hey, did you do it? And then I got all of these answers. Well, this happened, this happened. And I don't need to know any of that. If you would just say, like, nope, I didn't do it. I'm like, okay, then it didn't get done. It would take all the wind out of my sails of trying to fight, because then with all these other excuses that came up, then this happened. And then we're just talking about nothing.
I've tried to integrate this more. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I've tried to focus on taking responsibility more, especially in my workplace. So as a professor, I am approached by different students. And when students say, hey, my grade was put wrong into the grade book, or there's some mistake, I will try to say, when it's really me, I'll say, I did that 100%. Because sometimes they want to blame my assistant, because that's an easier way to get the grade changed, but save face for me. But I don't want to blame my assistant when my assistant didn't do it. And usually the mistakes are not my assistant, by the way. And so when I hear that, I'll say, oh, that was 100% me. I did that. And then they have nothing to say. They literally are like, okay. And I'll say, I'll try to fix it.
Yeah, it does. Because as soon as someone takes responsibility, what are you going to fight?
Yeah.
There's nothing to fight about.
I think the other strategy that's similar to that is taking action responsibly, right? So let's say you said you were going to do the dishwasher. You said you were going to do some sort of chore. I'm going to do laundry. Another way to take responsibility is say, I haven't done it. I'm going to do it now.
Yeah.
Because then there's not that much to talk about either.
It takes the fuel out of your fight for sure.
I think so. And then it ruins it for your little audience of little people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it showed them that you could actually talk about something and then take some action and not get into a big thing over it.
Yeah. I got to do that. I got to lean into that. Definitely.
So is there hope for you, Meredith?
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. I know I'm being negative about myself, because I am the one that struggles with this the most, for sure. And it's something I would like to not pass down so tensely that I feel it in myself. So yeah, it's just really helpful to continue to have this conversation. I think keep it on the table for sure.
Yeah. No, it's a good thing for us to check in on. And I think checking in on all the four horsemen is not a bad idea, to say, are they entering into any of these relationships?
Yeah.
And put them into practice that will take the air out of that defensiveness if possible.
And this is definitely one that I think can just creep in so easily in little things throughout the day. And then it's been months you've been like this, and then it's been years. And yeah, I think it's definitely good to just keep this one for me. And if someone's like me out there, keep it on the forefront of your mind to check in with yourself, your tone, and why you're leaning into defending yourself against the person that's supposed to be on your team.
We could add it and say, we'll do your vital signs in your relationship. We're going to take the temperature on your defensiveness, your criticism, your contempt, and your stonewalling. We'll just take temperatures on all to see what your health is.
I like that.
Once again, thank you for joining us today. Please remember to rate, share, and subscribe to our podcast. And thank you for listening to Asking for a Friend.
Let us know what you thought of the episode. Our email is hello@afafpodcast.com. This show is for educational purposes only and is copyrighted. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. Thanks for listening to Asking for a Friend with TalkDoc.